50 million years ago, the landmass we call India was a drifting island. Propelled by massive currents of subterranean magma, it raced across a prehistoric sea and collided with Eurasia. The force of that impact buckled the Earth's crust, thrusting these mountain peaks 5 miles into the sky. This new Himalayan wall trapped moisture-laden winds, triggering the first monsoons and watering a vast rocky landscape. Over millions of years, India became a humid paradise of dense jungles and deep rivers. It was a world dominated by giants, including truck-sized hippos and the stegodon, a massive elephant ancestor with 10-foot tusks. The first human masters of this environment were Homo erectus, often called the Narmada human. They were built for physical dominance, with thick bones, heavy brow ridges, and athlete-like musculature. They roamed the riverbanks from the Narmada to the Godavari, using heavy, teardrop-shaped stone axes to hunt the subcontinent's massive game. For hundreds of thousands of years, their sheer physical power made them undisputed apex predators. However, that high muscle mass required a constant, massive intake of calories. They were biologically tethered to an environment that provided an endless supply of large prey to sustain their enormous bodies, leaving them vulnerable to any sudden disruption in the food chain. 74,000 years ago, that disruption arrived. On the island of Sumatra, the Toba supervolcano erupted in a cataclysmic explosion. The sound reached the Indian coast as a dull roar, but the real threat was the billions of tons of ash following behind it. In a matter of weeks, the Indian sky vanished behind a gray veil. Temperatures plummeted as a volcanic winter took hold, turning the tropical landscape into a frozen wasteland. Forests died, rivers became toxic with ash, and the giant herbivores that sustained the Narmada humans began to vanish. The biological advantages of the Narmada humans became a death sentence. Their large, energy-hungry bodies acted like heavy machinery running on an empty tank. As the large game vanished, they simply could not extract enough energy from the barren landscape to survive. Their archaeological record shows that their tool technology remained virtually unchanged for over 1 million years, suggesting a rigid behavioral pattern. Combined with a smaller forehead and less developed brain regions for complex planning, they lacked the cognitive flexibility to hoard food or pivot to new survival strategies during the famine. This inability to adapt to a shifting environment led to a total collapse. The Narmada humans vanished from the fossil record, leaving the Indian subcontinent empty of human life for thousands of years. While India lay silent, the Toba winter triggered massive droughts across Africa. The species remaining there, Homo sapiens, faced a choice between local extinction or a desperate walk into the unknown. Driven by hunger, small groups began moving toward the edges of the continent. This is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Lower sea levels made the gap narrower than it is today, but crossing it still required families to trust makeshift rafts of wood and bamboo. Many likely perished in the waves, but those who reached the Arabian side became the first explorers of a new world. They navigated the barren Arabian Peninsula by sticking to the water's edge. This coastal migration allowed them to bypass the interior deserts entirely, using the shoreline as a guide and a source of sustenance. They survived on fish, crabs, and oysters, carrying their few possessions across multiple generations. This slow, persistent march east continued for thousands of years, with the sea providing the steady calories that the inland forests no longer could. Roughly 65,000 years ago, these travelers reached the fertile plains of the Indus. They found a land where the volcanic ash had turned into rich soil and the forests had returned. But they also found a jungle more lethal than anything they had known in Africa. The Indian jungle was a labyrinth where sleeping in the open invited a fatal encounter with a tiger or leopard. These newcomers lacked the physical bulk of their predecessors, meaning their survival depended on finding an alternative to raw strength. In the hills of central India, they found security in rock shelters like Bhimbetka. These natural fortresses provided deep stone walls and high overhangs that kept the monsoon rains and nocturnal predators at bay, giving humanity its first permanent sense of home. They guarded these cave entrances with fire. The flames served as a physical barrier against animals, but the hearth also became a social anchor. Around these fires, the tribe shared knowledge and built the group cohesion necessary to face the dangers of the daylight. Because their old, heavy stone tools were too slow for agile forest prey, they engineered a technological shift. They produced microliths, tiny, razor-sharp blades. By binding these stones to wooden shafts, they created lightweight projectiles that could strike a deer or bird from a safe distance. The survival of Homo sapiens in India relied on this move towards precision engineering and community trust. By solving environmental problems with their intellect, they secured a foothold in a land that had previously destroyed the physically stronger. Once basic survival was guaranteed, the inhabitants of Bhimbetka began using the cave walls as a canvas. They ground minerals into pigments to record hunting strategies and group dances, marking the transition from simple biological survival to the creation of a shared culture. This expanding intellect also grappled with the mystery of death. Excavations of ancient graves show that they buried their dead with jewelry, weapons, and food. These rituals indicate that by this stage, humans had developed the abstract concept of a soul that existed beyond the physical body. 9,000 years ago, the nomadic lifestyle began to fade as humans learned to manipulate wild seeds. Instead of wandering the plains for food, they realized that clearing a patch of land and planting crops could provide a predictable surplus supply of energy. This ability to produce food on demand allowed people to settle permanently. Small riverbank villages began to grow, anchoring the population to the land and creating the social structures required to manage larger groups of people. By 5,000 years ago, those early farming settlements had grown into the world's first planned urban centers. These were the cities of the Indus Valley civilization, spanning a territory larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. Their urban planning was remarkably precise. Streets were arranged in a strict 90-degree grid, and every brick used across the civilization followed a standardized 4:2:1 ratio. This level of uniformity suggests a highly organized central authority and a mastery of mathematics. They also pioneered advanced public health engineering. Houses were equipped with private bathrooms and connected to a network of covered brick drains. This massive public bath at Mohenjo-Daro used bitumen-sealed bricks to remain waterproof, showcasing a sophisticated understanding of water management. These stone seals, used for trade and administration, confirm that these cities were part of a complex, unified commercial network. They were the world's first industrial-scale society, built on a foundation of intellectual and social cooperation. Modern Indian civilization is the direct result of this long adaptation. It is a legacy defined by the refugees who crossed the sea and used their capacity for engineering and community to transform a dangerous wilderness into a home.